Managing Director of Paragon Trust Company and tax and private client practitioner, joins us to bring a common sense approach to money in a world of total insanity. Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
All right, our pal Tony D, bright and early here on this Tuesday morning, talking about a little bit of everything, eventually maybe circling back to some of the financial woes here in the state of Connecticut. But, you know, Tony had reached out to me, and he heard a call from our pal Rocky the other day, and mentioning John F. Kennedy. And, you know, Kennedy's assassination on Sunday was an anniversary, right, Tony?
Yeah, November 22nd. Good morning. Proud to be among everyone. And, you know, when Brother Rocky called up and he was talking about, you know, he was 8 years old and this happened. Well, I was 8 years old and it happened too, and I could tell you the day. I was in third grade, Newfield School, Stamford, Connecticut. It was a very warm November day, you know, very much like our last Friday. Whenever we have one of those Fridays in November, I always turn to Kathy and say, okay, what's going to happen? But what it was, we went out, we had recess, and we came back in the room. At 2:30 was dismissal. And the teacher, who was a very, very, very beautiful redheaded Irish girl, as we were getting our sneakers off and getting our shoes on, getting ready to go to the bus, she comes in shrieking and she says, the president has been shot. The president has been shot. Everybody pray. Now, I was going to school in the Jewish part of town. 3/4 of my third grade class is Jewish. Everybody, Lee Elci, is on their knees praying the Lord's Prayer. It was, I mean, you look back and you say, this was amazing. Then she ran back and she was crying and her mascara was running, saying, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. And we got on the bus. We were in silence. Our mothers came down to walk us to the bus, walk us back to the houses. They never did. And it was just this chill of a weekend. And it actually came to that Sunday where, gone to church, I was sitting on the floor and watching Lee Harvey Oswald being let out by the Dallas detectives. And my father, who's sitting behind me, my father worked in movies, ran movies, always wrecked the endings of movies when we were watching the TV. And he looked at this really boneheaded move that was. He's like, "What are they doing? Look at him get shot!" All of a sudden, bang! And I turned. I said, "Hey, Dad, you know the end of this movie?" Wow. It was just this stunning thing. But all of that to say this, more to the serious, I think this thing, what Brother Rocky was saying yesterday about, question what's happening. This really started to make me question, is everything folks are telling you really on the up and up? Because as time went on, as the Zapruder film was released, as all these things saying, hey, they didn't, they told us one thing, but a whole bunch of other things happened. But that really, this time of year, it always kind of sets me back to where I am, and I think it's made me a lot more, quizzical and a lot more analytical. And it's like, okay, well, you're telling me this, but why? And it was a horrible thing, but in some ways, I'm grateful I've gone through that because I think it's made me a better person.
So 8 years old was enough for you to comprehend what was going on?
Oh, yeah, I have. Believe me, if we had 45 minutes, I can give you specific events to that day. Yeah.
We'll have to do that one day because that's a fascinating, it's obviously one of the most fascinating events in the history of this country. And by the sound of it, you don't sound like you think it was a one-man job from the book's depository.
Well, put it this way, you can go on for days, but if you go back and you look at the Dallas broadcasts of that day, you have a number of people who were in the TV studio, and the professionalism of the journalists on that day with nothing, working with absolutely nothing, is absolutely incredible. A lot of them were World War II people, so, they kind of knew. It's not like today. They know how the game was played. And people were saying, we ran over to the grassy knoll, which was way over to the right to trace the shots. And that was not the school book depository building, which was way back at that point. And when the president fell on the fatal shot, he was pushed back going as the car was moving. And that's not how a bullet would react if you were, falling from, if you were being shot that way you'd be going forward rather than backward.
So how did we just decide that as a nation that we're going to believe that this is the way it happened? They just force-fed this to the American people?
Largely, yeah, and a large part of that was the Warren Commission, and the fact that there was such an anti-Castro sentiment that we had to keep everything clean. And the person really who, and it's a much longer story, but the person who really kind of directed the flow as to what it wasn't was Jerry Ford. Who really, was kind of put there. It goes back to, quote unquote, the magic bullet, and Arlen Specter and Dean Norman Redlick. I say Dean because I knew him when he was a dean, and what they were told to come up with when they inspected the car. And yeah, it was just this whole thing. If they didn't want to, they did not want a nuclear war at that point, right, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
It's got to be sort of ingrained now in you and a lot of folks your age, smart folks like you, that you just can't trust what America sort of puts out there for you a lot of the times, right?
Well, no, or the state, and fast forward to the present day.
Right.
There was a report kicking around last week about the state of the unemployment state rate here in Connecticut was 6%. Now, if that's the case, I'm dating Ginger Rogers at 3:00 this afternoon. It's just not. What that deals with is that particular metric deals with a specific type of benefit known as an extended benefit. And it's a kind of a way that the federal government calculates that. And this is something like, well, things are improving in Connecticut. No, it's absolutely apples and oranges. The real story, which really didn't start to break in Connecticut until last night, even though it was all over the country before that, is our lovely state unemployment fund, due to malfeasance, due to mismanagement and not COVID-19, is broke once again. And, anybody, I'm going to use the word, any idiot running a trust fund knows that if you pay out money and your income-producing things, wherever they come from, in this case it's the contributions of workers and things like that and whatever interest, aren't catching up with that, sooner or later you're going to run into a deficit. Now, this was not unexpected. In their report, in the Department of Labor's report, that was August 14th of this year, they said, and you hear these things, and now you're hearing on the mainstream media, we really have an 11% unemployment. No. The Department of Labor itself said in August they had a 17% in their document. Right. And it's probably 20 now. It'll probably be 25 after, the Christmas trade is over. And, it's like, well, if this is happening, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to do two things, numbskulls. You're either going to, A, open the state responsibly and get contributions into this fund before literally you kill us all, or B, you're going to take some of this CARES Act money, the $1.2 billion, and you're going to allocate. Lee Elci, they did neither. And now they're going to come to all us employers who are not connected with, the upper echelons of whatever, the pizza guy in Ledyard, and say, you're going to pay that special assessment and you're going to pay the interest on that loan. Guess what? A lot of people aren't going to be here, either by choice or by necessity.
So how do they make? I mean, if they saw it coming, like you said, any respectable, responsible trust runner would see this coming a mile away. They
knew. They knew.
What could they have done? I mean, what could they have done to stop this? Then, I mean, couldn't.
Well, two things. I mean, it was like if you weren't going to decide to reopen the state responsibly,
right,
I think is the wrong thing to do. You would have said, okay, we've got to have a moratorium on spending. Maybe the people don't get their state raises. I mean, after all,
right,
we're in this state of emergency, and we're going to make sure that we're going to pay out our manifest destiny in, because we don't want to kill these businesses to the point where they're never going to be able to get started. I mean, yeah, we're relatively small, and I haven't laid off anybody, but what about somebody with a big restaurant with, 75 people working? They're going to get killed. They're not going to be able to be started. Now, where you can take a virtual business elsewhere, many will, but that guy with the bricks and mortar is going to say, "Well, the heck with it, I'm bankrupt."
Right. But was there a time within this sort of thing as it moved forward that they could have, like, they would have had to grab money from someplace else to put it in?
Well, they were grabbing, starting in the Department of Labor's own report presented to the Appropriations Committee. It's there in plain sight, people. They were borrowing in July. They knew the ship coming off corner. But, we find out about it, November? And then it's like, oh, you guys got to go and you got to pay for our stupidity again. I'm getting a little tired of it.
Yeah, no question about that. Tony D, always an excellent conversation with him on these Tuesday mornings. What are you planning on doing for Thanksgiving? You got anything going on?
I have a 1-foot reading pile. I can't wait to get to it. And I'm going to start on this Kennedy assassination stuff again.
I think that would be a fun conversation because I'll be honest, not that I know a lot about a lot, but I don't, I'm sort of in sort of the public, I'm in the public's perception, I guess, of what happened with JFK. I don't know much more than what everybody else knows. So maybe listening to you explain it and in great detail and great depth, and I think that would be a lot of fun to do that one day. We'll have to do that.
Yeah, and I have stories of all the assassinations, where I was, what the impressions were, and you can't explain it to young people. They don't understand
What was harder, JFK or 9/11?
For me, 9/11, because it was real. I knew people downtown. We were doing work with people in that industry. JFK was, for me, it was like we said in the beginning, it was almost like living through a movie.
Yeah. Strange, really strange. I mean, I can remember what I was doing when Reagan got shot, and that was an eerie feeling. I can only imagine how much more heightened and impactful it was with Kennedy. And in particular, really, you didn't have a lot of visual to go with, right, the day of. You just kind of had what they were reporting. They didn't play that video that day, did they?
Yeah, I mean, CBS played through on a soap opera. ABC played through on a rerun of Father Knows.
Yeah, but they weren't playing the video of him getting shot, right?
Well, no, that didn't come out until the release of the Zapruder.
Right.
Which was, there was nothing like that.
Well, think about how different we are nowadays. Like nowadays, it's got to be instant visual, otherwise we don't believe it, right? Or maybe it didn't happen, or it didn't happen the way that they're saying, because we have video with everything now. Everybody has a cell phone, and just back then, you were just going by Walter Cronkite and whoever else was talking.
Whoever else was reporting. Yeah, I mean, it was like ABC in New York. Ron Cochran is coming back from lunch. They're propping up a cardboard set, and they're taking off his sport coat and wiring him up. It was just entirely on the fly. For its time, it was just magnificent coverage, but that's what you had.
It is. It's so different, the news coverage now, as opposed to when it was, back then. I mean, you have gotten a chance to actually live through both of those, and it's remarkable what has happened. So
it really is. I mean, we had, and we were hot stuff, living close to New York City. We had 7 television channels. Nobody had that.
All right, buddy. Thank you, pal. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Have a good one.